So, Mark, we travel around the world. We meet
Yeah.
people from all different cultures. Any good stories about people you've met along the way?
Wow, people I've met. I've met some strange people and some cool people. You know, I've also had a chance to meet some celebrities just in my life. Not because I'm speaking, but not through speaking, but a few years ago I had a chance to attend a Boys and Girls Club dinner in New York City. They were honoring a famous Boys and Girls Club member who happened to be from the town I lived in at the time. I lived in Mount Vernon, New York. And the man who they were honoring was from Mount Vernon, New York, and he went to the same Boys and Girls Club my son David went to when he was playing AAU basketball years ago. You may have heard of him, some guy named Denzel something.
Denzel.
Yeah, Denzel.
It's such a common name. That could be.
Well, you know, if you ever want to do a movie of your life and you want a guy to play me, you might want
Denzel.
Denzel.
There you go.
Yeah, Denzel was the honoree, but it was a big deal.
Wow.
And yeah, the company had bought a table for 10, and it was a who's who of African American celebrity. I met Angela Bassett, who was in that movie today, Mission Impossible Fallout. Yeah, she was in that movie. I met her and her husband, Courtney B. Vance. He used to be in Law and Order SVU as the ADA Carver. And she was just so sweet. She was so kind. She stood there and talked with me, and she was so personable. I had a photograph with Shuddy the Entertainer. I met Wesley Snipes. I saw Denzel. Michael Jordan was there. Morgan Freeman, Isaac Hayes, Muhammad Ali was there. And get this, Susan, who was our HR person who was with me, said, "Mark, take the camera, take a picture of me." And Susan posed with a guy named Donald Trump, and I took their picture. So I actually took a picture of Susan with Trump, and I have it in my archives in my laptop at home. So I got to meet, so many celebrities there in a social environment. But also along the way, you encounter people you see about in the airport. "Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Great work." But the most intriguing would have to have been when I was in Chennai, India, in the fall of 2017. As keynote speaker for this Toastmasters conference. And they have what's called a chief guest. You've been to in the Middle East, and they have a chief guest, and they come and they just wow the whole place. So I am the American celebrity world champion, but the chief guest was a prince from that area in India, Prince Asif. And he spoke, and it turns out he spoke, he left, and then I spoke. Well, before I spoke, he came back. I didn't think anything of it. But after the opening was over, I got to meet him. We shook hands. And he says, "I would like you and your wife to come to the palace for lunch on Tuesday."
Wow.
Now, if we had plans for Tuesday, guess what? We ain't going anywhere.
No more.
We're going to the palace.
Sorry.
It turns out Prince Asif had met me. He shook my hand, and he told me that when he shook my hand, he felt he had to get to know me. He changed his plans, stayed to hear me speak, had Andrea and me and 12 of our Toastmaster friends join him at the Amir Mahal, the family's ancestral palace in Chennai, India, for lunch the following Tuesday. And he had 2 large tables set up for meals. And he placed himself next to me at the table and began to ask me questions about parenting of all things. I began to answer, and Prince Asif said, "Wait, Mark, hold on a minute." And he summoned his wife, Seema, and the other diners at the other table, and he made everyone bring their chairs, come around his table, and Andrea and I gave a 15-minute seminar on parenting for this prince in India, his wife, and all the guests and attendees. I'm thinking, are you kidding? And then the prince showed us around, at the palace, and he took us to his private quiet room, his recording studio. Dude is a musician. And when we were all done, we went outside and we had photographs. We even had a goofy photograph we posed for. And he said, "Let's stay in touch." "Right, Prince, we're going to stay in touch, sure." The man is my friend on Facebook. We exchange WhatsApp messages frequently, voice messages. He's a devout Muslim, I'm a devout Christian. And he always says, when he meets me, he always says, "Mark, my brother, so good to hear your voice again." And here's a prince in a foreign country who calls me brother and didn't just say he'll stay in touch. We'll truly have a relationship.
Wow.
And his wife Seema and my wife Andrea have exchanged recipes on Facebook with each other. And you never expect this as you go through life, but you get to meet some really cool people. And I know you have had your own fair share of meeting famous people as well. But it's the beauty of it is the skills we've learned in communication have served us well. And when we meet people like this, we know how to behave. For the most part,
We do?
We would try anyway.
He knows how to behave. I'm like, somebody tell me what to do.
Every encounter with somebody famous is certainly interesting, and it wasn't the first time. Very quickly, one more in high school when I was in the All-Star Chorus. We got to sing at the Jamaica House, which is the equivalent of the White House, where the Prime Minister lived, and we had a guest from another Caribbean country who was there, and they said we want 2 people from each group, from the choir, the dance troupe, the band. We want 2 people to go on stage and meet this dignitary, and you, Mark, you're one of our prominent youth, you're going to go on stage and meet this guy. I said yes, and I went on stage in line as this man came up, tall, broad shoulders, barrel-chested, a green hat on his head, army fatigues, a cigar in his mouth, stuck his hand out, and I shook this massive paw of a hand, and I was standing face to face with a young, strong, virile Fidel Castro.
Oh, wow.
I met him, I shook his hand, and a year later when I went to Cuba for what was called Carifesta, the Caribbean Festival of Arts that was held in Cuba, we were at the Jamaican ambassador's residence, and President Castro came by again. So I saw him twice. And these things you kind of dream of. But it happened for me, and I was just so blessed to have a chance to meet people of foreign countries of state, and you never know who you're going to meet, and it was truly wonderful. And the idea of building a relationship with a prince just blows my mind. So I count myself blessed and fortunate.
I remember one of the most unorthodox places I had a brush with fame. I don't even think you heard this story. I was at Bickford's.
Oh, wow.
In Framingham, Massachusetts. Okay, so it was near Bose, and I was actually having lunch with Rosemary, one of my mentors, and I was still finding out what speaking was.
Mm-hmm.
I was coming over from comedy. I was doing a little bit of both. I was definitely still a wannabe speaker. I was maybe a Toastmaster, but that's about it at that point. And I'm sitting there with Rosemary in one of the booths, and this guy comes in, and I'm like, oh, like, I know him. That's BJ Honeycutt. And it was Mike Farrell, the actor who played BJ Honeycutt, and come to find out, his daughter went to Framingham State College.
Oh, wow.
So he was actually there to visit her. And at this point, too, I was still like dabbling in the acting. I wanted to do a little acting. And I remember trying to work up, because I was still super introverted at that time, trying to work up the courage. I'm like, I gotta ask him, I gotta say something. Like, no one was gathering around him, no one, no one was going up, and I'm like, I have to. So I kind of like waited until he was leaving. I'm like, okay, Rosemary, let's go. And so I walked out like right behind him, and we got out to that parking lot. I said, excuse me, Mr. Farrell, I'd love to do some acting, and I'm starting to do some acting, and I would love some advice. I said, what advice do you, because I'm like, I don't know what to say. So I asked for advice. And he sat there, and he really took the question serious. And he said, know who you are. And I remember walking away going, wow, what the heck does that mean? and it took me a few years, but I really, I latched onto that advice. And I realized that I wasn't a comedian, I was a speaker.
Oh.
And it helped me, and it was very influential, even though at the time I'm like, wow, what does that mean? But I came, and he was talking about acting, like, and the person you are and where you belong. And it was cool because I slowly realized I'm a speaker, I'm a teacher. I love teaching, I have a passion for that, but I'm really not a comedian. But I'm so thankful for my comedy past because it laid the foundation. But I never really felt like I was like one of the comedians. Like I was one of the guys. After the comedy show would hang out, and I always kind of felt like the outcast. Even though no one treated me poorly, I just never, I don't know, I'm like, it's not me. It's not who I am. I felt I was more of a corporate guy,
Right.
more of a speaker, in that world, and no offense to comedians, it's just that's who I was, and it was so it was an interesting brush with fame
But at least
at
he
a
didn't.
Bickford's.
Hey, you never know, man. I saw Dylan Baker, a famous character actor, in an elevator in LaGuardia Airport. I met Stevie Wonder at a restaurant in New York City, the same place I met a guy named Roscoe Lee Brown, who was also an actor, who was big on the Cosby Show. So you meet people all over, and you kind of say hi and everything, And the cool thing is, I got to be an extra on a movie that was filmed in Macon, Georgia, recently too. So. When it does come out, or a series, when it does come out, I can talk about it. But if I tell you, I got to kill you. So,
Well, let's not do that. Not tonight. Maybe tomorrow.
Too nice of a night for that, Darren. But yeah.